The name The Psychedelic Furs is as evocative as the sound that made the band famous. Lush, layered, surreal, and stylishly jagged. It conjures the dreamlike fusion of 1960s hallucinatory rock and 1980s art school cool, a perfect reflection of their music's balance between chaos and beauty. And like much of post-punk's brilliance, the story behind the name isn't a calculated marketing move. It's the product of irony, instinct, and the restless creativity of Britain's late 1970s underground. In 1977, brothers Richard and Tim Butler began forming a band in London. The punk explosion had just shaken the British music scene, but the Butlers wanted to go beyond its raw aggression. Along with Duncan Kilburn, Paul Wilson, Roger Morris, and Vince Ely, they began experimenting with sound, jagged yet melodic, harsh yet hypnotic, pulling influence from David Bowie, Roxy Music, and the Velvet Underground. Their music felt cinematic and emotional, more about mood than speed. Now they just needed a name that captured that duality. At first, the group cycled through a few temporary names, RKO, Radio, even the Europeans, but none had the strange elegance they were looking for. They wanted something that felt romantic and disorienting at the same time, something that expressed both the grit of punk and the sophistication of art rock. During one of their brainstorming sessions, someone tossed out a phrase that immediately stuck: the psychedelic furs. It was perfect. The words seemed to contradict each other. Psychedelic, suggesting swirling color, mind expansion, and poetic abandon, and furs, evoking luxury, sensuality, and decadence. Together, they formed an image that was tactile yet transcendent, glamorous yet unsettling. The name didn't just describe a genre, it created an atmosphere. It sounded like something you could see and feel. From the moment they began performing under the name, audiences took notice. In a London scene filled with stark, minimalist names like The Clash, The Damned, and Wire, the Psychedelic Furs stood out as something mysterious and self-aware. The name hinted at texture and emotion, exactly what their music would deliver. Their sound, built on droning guitars, wailing saxophones, and Richard Butler's gravel and velvet vocals, felt like the oral equivalent of their name: hypnotic, glamorous, and full of bite. By the release of their self-titled debut album in 1980, the Psychedelic Furs had defined a new frontier in British rock, the bridge between punk's rebellion and new wave's sophistication. Their name became their calling card, an emblem of that sonic transformation. It wasn't psychedelic in the traditional kaleidoscopic sense. It was psychological psychedelia, a swirl of emotion and atmosphere rather than acid trip imagery. The furs element gave it texture, grounding the abstraction in something sensual and real. As the band evolved through the 1980s with albums like Talk Talk Talk, Forever Now, and Mirror Moves, the name took on even more meaning. Songs such as Love My Way and Pretty in Pink, the latter inspiring the title of the 1986 John Hughes film, made the Psychedelic Furs synonymous with sophisticated melancholy and stylish introspection. Their name came to define an entire aesthetic of shadowy elegance and emotional honesty. Looking back, the Psychedelic Furs remains one of the most perfectly conceived band names in rock history. It sounds like the music feels, strange yet inviting, polished yet raw, timeless yet utterly of its era. The juxtaposition of psychedelic and furs creates a poetic tension that mirrors their art itself. Beauty emerging from distortion, emotion wrapped in texture. It wasn't about fashion or drugs or even literal psychedelia. It was about feeling, atmosphere, and transformation, the space where thought meets texture, where emotion turns to sound. And that, more than anything, is what the Psychedelic Furs have always embodied.